All right, a little bit about wayfinding systems, or the subfield of environmental design that we call environmental graphics. It is a specialization of our disciplines, collective disciplines. It is a service provided by some multidisciplinary firms. Environmental graphics, environmental wayfinding, signage systems are actually good things to be offering, but in many cases you are subcontracting out with a contractor that is doing signage systems or working with a subcontractor. But in many cases, if you're doing trail systems, urban trail systems, economic development, a complex building like ours, I mean, the signage graphics are critical for how someone finds their way through a building, okay, a city, a village, a site, a shopping center, whatever. And if you've been to a hospital lately, you know that signage is critical in terms of understanding where you need to go. So this science of wayfinding, or this science of environmental graphics, has some interesting things to think about and consider when it comes to readability and accessibility and color theory and all those things. And there are books in the library about environmental graphics that have award winners and best case studies. So if this is something you're potentially interested in, it is a sub-discipline of our disciplines and could become very well a specialization for one of you. So someday. So there's some interesting stuff going on recently, and I've been working on this book for about 12 years now, but this is one chapter in it, in terms of how environmental graphics can engage people, engage attention, not engage attention, and things like that. So one example from the lovely village of Marshall, Michigan, this idea that you could market your downtown as like a shopping mall with identifiable landmarks and key things. Interesting stuff, but unfortunately the sign hangs from a pole, and that's one thing, but if you're blind and you have a cane, you can't detect the bottom of the sign, so you end up walking right directly into it. So there are some accessibility issues that come up with signage and wayfinding when it fails and when it doesn't. Seeing this fellow on a hotel, at first glance you think he's a real person, so sometimes that can be shocking. And then a few things then start to, as you look at examples around the world and around the country, do start to come to fruition and start to make some sense. When you pop out the subway in DC, you are typically confronted with one of these. And what it does is it gives you a review of the entire metro system map. It gives you a regional context map, and then it gives you a city map with each of these circles that represent 5 minutes walk. So it's a nice way to pop out of the metro and get some orientation, because whenever you use the subway system, you come out of it, you don't know which way is north, right? You don't know which way is up or down, and so that type of reorientation is always helpful. When it comes to color theory and fonts and typography, white text on a blue field seems to be readable from the greatest distance. White text on a contrasting blue field seems to be readable at the greatest distance, and in some of the lowest light conditions. So evening conditions, early morning conditions. That's why your highway signs typically are white text on blue, white text on green, or white text on brown. Okay, so white text on blue in highway signs typically means direction. White text on green typically means destination, right? White text on brown typically means a natural setting or a park or something like that. So that system of thinking goes into our understanding of how signage can work at the pedestrian level as well. So it does start to fall together in terms of what is readable from the greatest distance. And so we have found that white text on high contrast color does seem to work. You start to see examples of that in the rest of DC. You've got basically traffic signage that is very easy to read and clear to read. So and then smaller things at the pedestrian level that are easy to read for the pedestrian. And then regionally, this is in Pennsylvania, so this is the Laurel Highlands system. You've got the state system here, which is in brown, so that's again recreational amenities. But then this white text on blue is easy to read from about about 30, 40 miles per hour. Other water trails and things like that are kind of fun. This is obviously a sign in the shape of an oar, which is cute and trendy. Other things that happen sort of at the neighborhood level, Chatham Village, which is considered the modern birthplace of the birthplace of modern urban planning, has a participatory kiosk where people can leave notes for each other. Woodstock, Vermont has this wonderful town crier, which is a chalkboard with a temperature and the clock, and it's just a place where anybody can leave announcements for their organization or events. So it's one of the more folksy utilitarian things. Other signage systems happen at different levels. If any of you have been to Boston and have taken the Freedom Trail, that's a strip of bricks that is laid into the sidewalk that you can basically follow that. And as you then encounter different historic sites, there's a signage and font system that's fairly consistent, white text on brown in these cases, but also these different context maps that tell you about each of the sites. And then as you leave that site, you just simply get back on the brick trail and you follow the red brick strip that takes you to the next site. So it's a wonderful way to navigate Boston. I recommend taking a full day or even 2 days to walk the Freedom Trail the next time you're in Boston. Other examples along the Rose Kennedy Greenway, this is the infamous Big Dig, the $3 or $4 or $5 or $6 billion project of burying the Boston Central Artery and then placing a series of outdoor rooms or parks on top of it, named for Rose Kennedy. This is the signage system that helps orient you to each of the parks. And then there are pavilions that tell you more about the Bay Islands and other attractions in the region. So a very elegant signage system there. Signage for the blind, signage for children. And they kind of work in the same way. This is the enabling garden at Glencoe at the Chicago Botanic Garden, where someone who is blind can trace and feel a relief map of the entire garden before entering the garden. But these relief maps are interesting because they also engage children really, really well. So this is London's South Bank with the new City Hall, Tower Bridge, Tower London, US Embassy, things like that. This is Central Munich, all in cast bronze. So someone can easily, tactily understand the urban fabric of Central Munich. So, and these aren't just attractions for the blind, they're attraction for anyone. Really, to see a model of where you are is really an interesting and very informative way to understand the urban fabric and different landmarks and the urban grid. Because some of these grids can be kind of confusing when you're on the ground. If you can see a landmark from where you're standing and then see it in context of the built map, then it can be quite informative. It isn't just that we like to make models in this building. Other forms of signage and interpretive signage, more examples from Boston here. These are sort of layers of the Boston Harbor. So each of these interactive layers, cut stainless steel, show how the harbor changed over time. So you move those around and take a look at those. And then these wonderful silhouette models help you identify ships of different eras that may be in or out of the harbor. In Leipzig, they have a wonderful collection of things. If you put your feet here, you can get a really good photograph of this thing. And you just find these. They have a pamphlet that accompanies them. You just walk around Leipzig and you put your foot there and take a picture, and it tells you what you're taking, and it's a way of sort of interacting with the city. The Stolperstein are another version of that, but at a much deeper level. This was started by a German artist, and it was intended as a form of memorial. It's taken several years, but this artist has continued to successfully document and place a Stolperstein, or a stumbling block, into the pavement at the address of every victim of the Holocaust, according to their original address. Now, this sometimes is unsettling for some folks who live in that neighborhood or even live in that house. But that reality is something that's very, very important to memorialize every single victim at their original address from which they were deported. So So it is an ongoing art project and one that has tremendous meaning and tremendous emotional impact when you see these stones and you see these names basically on a typical busy urban European sidewalk. Other systems that are interesting. The National Mall has a really clean system. They use pictograms or these simple graphics to help communicate landmarks or functions or museums. And those are good for multilingual situations, like when you have a lot of folks from other countries visiting your capital. And then color systems work fairly well. This is in Fort Wayne. If you get the contrast right, but if you squint a little bit, you notice that you might lose the purple. Do you notice that? If you squint your eyes just a little bit? So you've got to get the color contrast right. Otherwise, part of your signage might be unreadable. And in a low light situation, like early morning or evening, part of your signage might not be readable at all. So those kinds of contrast things are still important. But there's some good examples starting to pop up. Louisville, downtown Louisville, has a pretty good system. And other folks are starting to get wise to the idea of creating directories for their downtowns so that visitors can orient their way around things. Other older signage, remember that a lot of these older signs were designed for people who couldn't read. So the name of a pub might be called the Coach and Horses. So they put a picture of a coach and horses. And that was intended for the non-literate public to be able to find the pub. And so a lot of those older names, Sheep's Head, Queen Victoria, those sorts of things, become synonymous with those. And so that becomes a regular part of the landscape there. But there's some great historic, fun ways of different businesses making themselves distinctive with this non-verbal kind of signage. Other pretty traditional systems, I call these blade signs. Oxford, England, Brussels, Belgium, The Hague, Leipzig, again, they're basically pretty simple, right? Just cast iron on a post or a stanchion, and then they just point in the general direction of where they are, or where that destination is. So an older example here, cast iron, and then a newer example here in plastic. So it works very well. The Germans like to keep their things organized in 4 directions, but you notice it's like you could find your destination in the direction in one of the cardinal directions, or simply adjust the blade to point in the general direction of where that is. Downtown London, similar thing. Again, high contrast white text against a dark background. Looks like 4 directions there, but then everything's fairly consistent. Little symbols direct you to the underground or to the regional rail station or to restrooms. And then this map here is fairly important because this high contrast color is necessary, again, to be able to read it at night or be able to read the map in low light situations. High contrast is necessary so that the map is readable in different weather conditions and different lighting conditions. So this I'm assuming is either done in Quark or Illustrator, but it actually does resemble a lot of architectural drawings now. More examples of the blade signs, more examples of brass or bronze relief maps to interpret sites, more examples of medieval, nonverbal kinds of things, advertising your business with a symbol or with even characters. Other examples, even nearby, of signs embedded into streets. As more and more people just look at their phones all the time, sometimes it's helpful to put the sign on the ground as opposed to up in the air. So, and more examples of this high contrast, easy to read in low light situations with pictograms or elevations of buildings that help you identify landmarks in the landscape. So all in all, lots of different signage principles that we can extract from that in terms of fonts, color theory, sizes, things of that nature. Atlanta Midtown, and this is after the 1996 Olympics. These were all over Atlanta now, but they're extremely helpful. You've got a regional map, urban map, directory, and then history and culture on the back. And so this here starts to orient the motorist. This here starts to orient the pedestrian. It all fits together. And of course, most importantly, it is detectable by a cane. So if you are blind and you don't walk into it, the signage is designed to allow detectability by the cane. Greenville, South Carolina, one of the most livable cities in the South. We've had an intern from planning there. Also have he's now doing his master's at Clemson. Great partnerships with Mayor Knox White. Tremendous growth. Their signage system is beautiful. They've got the city logo integrated into it, and it's very easy to read. Very easy to change these out, too. Right? These are just pop in, pop out kind of deal. So you're not repainting the sign every year, and an easy to read map. So very good signage wayfinding system for the whole city. Other European examples. This is in Verona. This is a brass relief map into the ground. So this is the ancient Roman arena, and this is Juliet's balcony, and this is the central plaza. And so ways for kids to interpret the built environment. More examples of that. And then more importantly, things that don't work. Putting signs everywhere doesn't work. Having signs that are vague doesn't work. Having signs that are difficult to operate or read. These are cylinders that you have to rotate, and it's just stupid and just very difficult to read. Don't do things like this. And then I like this example from Pella, Iowa, the Dutch town of central Iowa. It has things that are behind you, and so it's like, well, why bother? You know, am I gonna be able to read out all this? And half of it is in Dutch. So if you don't read Dutch, or if you don't fully understand that you're in a Dutch town, you're not going to know what a klokkenspel is, all right, or what a molengracht is. It's not explaining to your visitor what exactly it is that they're looking for. So there's some do's and don'ts. These are features that I'm putting into the book in terms of being able to extract some key principles. I love the signage at Lincoln Park Zoo. It's all nonverbal, so kids can see it and understand it immediately. Because it's nonverbal, it also works for multilingual situations. And then reinforcing sort of the success of the DC and Philadelphia maps that help you navigate different neighborhoods in those cities. So at the end of each chapter of my book, I'll have a do and a don't. It sort of summarizes some of the key things or key takeaways or key principles to think about when we're looking at signage design. I have another chapter on pavilions and kiosks, which again are small environmental points or landmarks within larger spaces, things of that nature. This is the Chinese Tower in the English Garden in Munich, where over 1,000 people can eat and drink and listen to oompa bands and things like that. So it's from that era of 17th to 19th century garden design where a folly becomes a landmark in a landscape and becomes a recognizable thing. So if you say, meet me at the Chinese Tower, you know, everybody in Munich knows exactly what you mean. So that becomes something that's recognizable and identifiable in the city. This new visitor center next to St. Paul's Cathedral in London, really interesting piece of architecture that's distinctive against St. Paul's for sure, but is also very welcoming. Newer stuff in Philadelphia, newer stuff starting to be beta tested now, different technologies, charging stations, info points, things of that nature. But a lot of it is intended to work with not replace the cell phone, but work with the cell phone, considering that most people are orienting themselves around neighborhoods with the cell phone now. But there's this great sort of tradition of small kiosks or small pavilions serving food. This is the original Shake Shack from 1970 in New York. This is a ticket booth by Graham Gund in Boston where you can get low-cost theater tickets. This was a temporary exhibit in Millennium Park. So the tradition of the small pavilion or the folly or the garden pavilion is still very much with us. If you haven't been to Seaside yet, it is one of the first new urbanist communities in the country. Each street of Seaside when it terminates at the coast, is marked by a pavilion. So you would understand exactly where you are in each part of the town based on what you see at the end of each street. So each pavilion takes you over the protective coastal barrier. Notice you have to go up and then down again. That coastal barrier protects Seaside from storm surge and absorbs the kinetic energy of storm surge. And that actually has saved Seaside from a couple of big storms. But these pavilions act as wayfinding devices, but also as sort of beach devices, that sort of transition from the town to the beachfront setting itself. But you notice how you have to go up and then down. That's the protective dune or the protective beachfront. More stuff like this is popping up in New York, just places to charge your phone. Really, really important, connected with solar panels and things like that. Extremely important for the casual visitor and anybody really to be able to have public places to charge phones. DC waterfront, this is in Georgetown. This is a new project that went up recently, getting more expressive with steel and tension and things like that. So more interesting pieces of architectural details starting to pop up and create shelters along riverfronts, things like that. I put these two together. They're both in Germany. They're not that far apart. One very traditional from the 17th century, and then one very recent. The idea of just a functional building from the standpoint of shelter, or functional building from the standpoint of orienting visitors. Still very, I think, interesting projects within a city. And then this gets as traditional as you can get in central Pennsylvania, sort of that Victorian feel. And then there's some wonderful little stations in the Art Deco era that are interesting pieces as well. This sign is interesting. This is a National Waterfront. It acts as a directory, but it also acts as a rain shelter, as a light, and as a bench. So it does 4 or 5 things at the same time. And while not everybody can sit there, it does provide a place to rest. So that, I think, is important. A place to get out of the rain, a place to orient yourself, and a place to lean against. That, for me, is really important, just to combine as many different functions as you can with this type of furniture in the urban environment. If you just need to get off your feet for a couple of minutes and rest, then providing that little ledge can make a huge difference. Alexandria, Virginia, all the buses drop off at this point. People walk up and down King Street, but it's very hot there. So providing a trellis or an arbor, a very nice setting there just to get out of the sun. This pavilion by IDEO, really nice. This is a visitor pavilion on the Rose Kennedy Greenway that orients people to all of the different attractions that the Bay Islands offer, and it captures its own rainwater. I mean, it does a lot of different sustainable features. So nice stuff there. Other stuff, this is the Serpentine Pavilion in London that changes every single year. If you're a signature architecture fan, a different architect does this pavilion every year, this portion of London. So different names will build the pavilion only for that summer. Battery Park, New York, interesting material expressions. I love this one in London. It looks like a bug. So cute. Other standalone pavilions provide places to exercise. So if you're building an urban trail or you have a trail system in a park, you can build these exercise stations so folks can actually do cross-training within your city's park for pull-ups, push-ups, that sort of thing. Those are neat amenities that are starting to pop up. Millrace Park in Columbus, remember these? These are the restrooms, M or W, so get it? Yeah, so those are all by Stanley Seitzowitz in partnership with Michael Van Valkenburg Associates. And then we don't have these much in here in the United States, but in Europe, and particularly Eastern Europe, the kiosk is an important part of the streetscape. Because now that's because people still smoke cigarettes or read newspapers. This kiosk here is selling off the end of the day bread. So the end of the afternoon, there's all the bread that's left over in the grocery store 50 feet away. They bring out to the kiosk and they sell it quickly on short sale. So it's a way of engaging the pedestrian away from the storefront and into the middle of pedestrian traffic. So this is the end of the day kind of when the bread is all half off, half price. So these kiosks become an important part of urban life, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe. Back here in Muncie, I put in the example from the Craddock Wetland. That's sort of the design process that the students had as they designed and built this structure. And then on the south side of Muncie, the Brian Hunt Library Pavilion, which was also built by Ball State students, CAP students, over successive semesters, and the contributions that it has to the south side neighborhood, as well as the engagement, sort of the engaging spaces for kids that are part of that, water collection, details, things like that. And I put it in the book here because I think it's important that examples right here in Muncie that CAP students have designed and built get out to a larger audience. If I can get a publisher, certainly that would allow Ball State to be featured there. The reconstruction of the Bicentennial Pavilion, another series of design build electives that Professor Smith and Professor Levine were involved in over successive years, about 3 or 4 or 5 semesters long. But that reconstruction of that pavilion is an important landmark along the greenways. So opportunities to showcase some of our local stuff. This pavilion was built back in 1998 by my classmates here at Ball State, and it's been already rebuilt once the wood planks do have to be changed out every 20 years or so. And the table that sits in the middle now provides a map of the entire greenway system. So this is over in Whiteley. So right here in Muncie, we've got a good collection of pavilions right there. Just those 4 itself, interesting stuff, and the fact that they're all basically accessible by greenways. And then ending with do's and don'ts. This is Silver Spring, Maryland. This is the infamous AstroTurf Park in Silver Spring. Lots of different folks, urbanists and urban design and architects have written about this thing. To me, it was absolutely hilarious, and that public space would be space that would have to be vacuumed. It's the only public space I've ever seen that needs vacuuming. But this was, quote, public space left over by a retail developer that built the equivalent of an outdoor mall in downtown Silver Spring. So for years, that was a park, and people liked it, strangely enough. I didn't know that people would gravitate to AstroTurf, but they did. And then a few years later, they're like, oh no, just kidding. We're going to build a new city hall here. So this is what replaced it, this thing. I call it the manta ray. And it's got chairs and tables and stuff like that. And I believe that they could fill this in the winter for ice skating. So it does have a 4 seasons kind of deal, and it does kind of anchor one side of downtown. But people do miss the AstroTurf, strangely enough. And then let's see, Reston, Virginia. If you are not familiar with Reston, it is a totally planned community from the 1980s, and now the Silver Line, Metro Line, extends out to it. So it's one of the more successful new downtowns in the Delmarva region, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia regions. And it was inspired by Italianate thinking. So this is a farmer's market structure in the middle that kind of recalls the Crystal Palace in London or things like that. So there's some successes there, but I don't know. Machado and Silvetti, I really respect them as architects, but it's still kind of is a little bit weird. It's just weird. And nobody was there. That's the other thing, is that I start to notice these successful urban spaces, and I take pictures and there's never anybody there. So questioning those things, that starts to lead to some good questions and dialogue about do's and don'ts and the like. But certainly high hopes for that. But anyway, people miss the AstroTurf. So tonight I thought we would draw some stuff. We'll do some signage and maybe a pavilion. All right. So let's consider a small signage system. We're going to go back to half scale, half inch equals a foot. So let's measure out 3 inches. Start with the human scale. Halfway point would be the belly button. So to review some of our older stuff, start with the head, trunk, legs, arms, I like to start with a scale figure, sort of build the drawing around the scale figure. Always. Okay. We need a name of a fictional town. This changes every semester. So we need a fun name of a fictional town. Any ideas? Shout them out.
Wordle.
Wordle?
Wordle.
5 letters. Littleton. Okay, any other nominees? At least we'll know it was for 2022, right?
Right.
Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay. All right, so let's think about maybe a community gateway sign. Okay. So give it sort of a general size against our person. And what do they do in Worldton? Are these traditional folk? Are they modern folk? Contemporary? Do they like contemporary architecture? Do they like traditional architecture? What kind of folk are they in Worldton?
Contemporary.
Give them what?
Feels contemporary.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. All right. So let's give it a division line. Do some vertical. Could do something like that. And think about maybe something overhead. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see. 4. Okay, so L is the middle. So whenever you're dealing with a sign, I like to build it from the middle out, so you know which line, where your center line needs to be. So in this case, the L is in the middle, and we have to go 4 letters on either side. So maybe I'll get a marker that's more visible than that. Okay. So then we typically build the sign either side of that center line. Obviously, this is going to be white letters on green, right? Or yellow. Everybody playing Wordle every day like I am? Yeah? Okay. Oh! Yeah, I'm completely hooked. It's so great. So each of the letters needs its own sort of tile, right? A little more space. I'll use the marker just for some thickness. Thank you for the suggestion, Leah. This is fun already. We got a theme, right? We got a style. I'm gonna go a little more contemporary tonight, less traditional. Feed my inner modernist. Okay, so those letters could basically slide on a panel, and they can be overhead. As long as we don't create a situation where we're hitting our heads on it, it can be overhead. Okay. Let's play with some angles. And with maybe kind of go for a contemporary feel here. Maybe there's a sittable edge. Keep that angle. So if I want to repeat an angle, I match the angle here, bring it over, mark it, and then look on the graph paper, and I can make its opposite. Start to play with that. We'll pop up, let's pop up an extra letter up here, maybe the W. As we say in Michigan, W. Pop that up as its own little tile. That could be fun. And then over here to the side, I'll start immediately sketching the lower scale sign. So this is like a gateway sign. Let's do a neighborhood scale sign right away. Just pop that there. And we'll carry over our scale figure while we're at it. And we'll take an element from here. Maybe it's the W on a tile. Just becomes that. Overhead is good. We don't want to hit our head on this. Be hit in the face. So we can do a simple blade sign that is slightly overhead. So the directional ensemble sign. Like the one from Oxford or the one from Brussels. How many chances? You have what, 5? Is that right? 5 chances to get the word right?
6.
You have 6 chances.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. No, I just couldn't remember. Okay. So maybe let's do some cut stone down here. Start a pattern of alternating stone. Use the graph paper to do that. Just get a good variety there of vertical, small, thin, thick. Try to get a good variety going there. I do like to use the graph paper for that. That's why it's there. Take it all the way to here. Cornerstone there. Let's maybe do some steel details here. Maybe this is all steel. Do a pipe steel portion here. Pipe steel for the neighborhood scale as well. Something at the end here. It's sort of a sittable edge. Then, all these are different colors so I don't get lost. Maybe this is a sidewalk. Maybe there's some grasses or perennials behind this. Some broadleaf in front of it. Collection there. do that in a different color so I don't get too confused. Just want to start to create a little bit of a background there. Ironically enough, I'm getting texts about today's Wordle. It's just terrible. It's taking over our lives. It's also becoming ironic and almost comical how the Wordle connects with events in the news. I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay. Portion of the first underlay, and we take that paper down and we flip it over, really change it up, just take the piece that I want out of that. If there's any takeaway, hopefully we're getting some good takeaways from this. The idea that that first overlay is not sacred, and that first overlay can become the building blocks for other drawings. Takes sort of a CAD cut and paste kind of mentality to things, doesn't it, right? Copy paste or cut and paste kind of mentality applies it to hand drawing. The idea you don't have to redraw everything. Well, you don't have to redraw everything, that you can use parts and pieces and decisions that you've made in previous drawings, use them and bring them forward. That's an important takeaway of the course. I think it'll create some great versatility and amaze your friends, amaze your coworkers, hopefully enlighten some bosses in your future, design directors or project managers or otherwise. So pull that away, lay it down, create an alternative first overlay. This here. And going back to the pencil. So it looks like we've kept this. I'm going to stop that, bring it down. So keep this brick piece here, keep this seat, keep this person sitting here. And just start to create a column out of this here. Carry that over. Carry this up.
Okay, keeping with that contemporary look, what kind of roof would we like to do? I'll do a gable roof, butterfly roof. Gable roof,
Yeah, I know what gable is.
butterfly roof,
Oh. Gable.
gable roof, butterfly. What do you want?
Oh,
Okay. All right, so brick column there. Let's just do a pitch this direction. And then determine how big of a pavilion you want to do. You could do it as a gable or as a shed roof or as a butterfly roof. We're channeling some Frank Lloyd Wright here, right? Getting a little writing kind of going on now. Okay. So maybe the cross brace there. Yeah, some steel, a little bit of steel, maybe a little bit of steel going here. Get a little bit of an open web steel joist going on there. A little joist action. Then I'll match the height of this seat here. Match the height of that. Match the angle of this. Match the angle of that. Carry over the ground line. And maybe then carry over this brick. So you can take that over, bring that over as a gable roof, shed roof, butterfly roof, whatever you like to do. I'll bring over this W tile again. And maybe this is a brick column. On a stone plinth. Cross brace there. This. And just sketch in the brick. This is heavy brick. It's not standard 8-inch brick. This is thick, heavy stuff, probably concrete. Play with that seat a little bit. And then maybe a little bit of context here. So this is sitting here. sitting on that seat, person standing, waiting for a bus, something like that. I'll carry that down, try to match the two, try to get a little bit of symmetry going. There, using the graph paper helps. And then, I think I'll drop that light fixture right there. Carry it over from the side. And just a little bit, a few grasses, and a few broadleaf things there too. And I've already got the tree there in the background there, so that's good. Okay. Make a couple of corrections here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Add in any reminder or guidance for the stone if you need it. Kind of get a good dry stack kind of pattern going. So just real kind of a Wrightian juxtaposition of materials here. Masonry, steel. Really chunky brick, or you could divide it in two and have it become Roman brick. That's a possibility as well. But I think I'll stick with this. I'll do a division here. Just put in a few lines for brick. There. And we'll practice then some brick rendering technique. Give us good opportunity to practice a couple of materials here. And if you want, you can decide if you want to make this a pass-through shelter, or you could extend the bench all the way. That's a good decision to make. So you could do this as a pass-through shelter, or you could do this as a full shelter. Just extend that bench all the way across. Yeah. Kind of make it up as we go. That's another good takeaway from this system, is to sort of experiment as you go. What if I did this? Or what about this? Or what about that? Just kind of drop in now some more stone. We'll have lots of stone to practice here. Just put a wall of grasses behind it. Don't want to create too many hiding places back there, but a good sight line kind of at the sittable height is still good to maintain. So you don't create entrapment spaces or hiding places. All important for the safety of the users. Bring that forward. And then that creates the new first overlay. I like to lay in some wet color, and then I basically go on top and just kind of blend in the top half of it. Gives it a little bit of depth. Just like concentrate on that top half there. Touch here to the bottom, to the top of the sign, kind of work my way up into there. Scrub that in and feather it there like that. Get in here to the top of the grass. There we go. Maybe feather another feather right through that sign there. Okay. So that's the sky. I'm going to take a buffer of beige, and I'm just going to warm up the whole sign. Warm up the grass, people, put a layer of warmth. The dog. This is a buffer of beige. I'm just going to warm up the whole sign. So we'll displace any blue that's unnecessary. So just kind of a layer of warmth on the grasses, on the people, and on the stone. And that can be blended in too. I want to be careful not to get blue on. Yes, you want to fold this over, make sure you have a clean spot. Blend that in. So that's just a little bit of layer of warmth. Set that aside. Pull back the other one. Same sign. We just put in a layer of warmth. Distinguish it from the blue. That'll displace any blue that hit the roof line. Again, petroleum-based marker displaces the previous layers. So if you have any blue that hits your roof line, you can displace it with the buff, with the beige. Woo! Getting a little bit of fumes here. Oh boy. Okay. Just hit me. Wow. Make sure I get a clean spot on the towel. Blend that a little bit. It's got to be clean. Okay, I think I'll go with green next. Just a little bit of spruce green, the base of these grasses, the base of these broadleaf plants, whether they be mum or petunia or marigold. Just a little bit of green at the base of these grasses. A little bit of dot up in the tree. Again, we can just kind of suggest spring budding. Don't need to go full leaf on this one. It is in the background and it is not a foreground element. Just a tiny bit of that. And I think I'm going to do a green tile for the W. So laying some green around the W. As we say in Michigan, W. Nice green W tile. Set that aside. Come back to here. This is a spruce green. Lay in some green around that. A little bit of budding. bit of the base around the grasses and the broadleaf. Now the font. So the font of the sign, we need to decide now if we're going with that typical color scheme of the game. So that could be a combination of green, buff, or green, yellow, and gray. And you can play with that to your liking. Whether that be random or if you have a methodology to it, or you want to emphasize some letters versus another. Either way, I think your audience will get the joke for sure. Anybody looking at your portfolio will get it. There were a couple of memes a couple of weeks ago of people who just had no idea what Wordle was yet. My favorite meme was probably Homer Simpson sitting at a bar surrounded by Wordles, not knowing what any of it meant. Probably even better seeing friends who are in their 60s and 70s saying on Facebook, "What is this? What on earth is going on?" And then even better to have folks explain the game, and next thing you know, they're all playing it. Well, now I really have a decision to make. So this font color and then the steel color, that's really where it comes down. I've got to make a decision. So this could be a Core 10 steel, or it could be a galvanized steel. Look at the color, see what I have. I really want this to pop, so. That could be a blue neon at night. I mean, they have blue neon now. All right. And then, let's see, how about a desert tan and a gray? Start alternating some of this stone. And I'll grab a gray. That gray will alternate some of that stone color. And I think I'm going to gray out my steel. Just scrub it out. I'm going to go for a galvanized steel. Core 10 steel would be kind of a rust color. This is more of a protective patina on the steel. A bit of goldenrod on these grasses here. And then study the technique and then try to replicate it. Same colors, same technique. That's brick or that's stone. This is a grade 3. It'll work against or with the buff, just to give that impression of these different types of stone. Again, this might be flagstone, could be Indiana limestone, could be Tennessee flagstone. Could be Pennsylvania bluestone. Could be New Hampshire granite, depending on where you are. Just try to get kind of that weathering feel to it. And then I went with the galvanized steel here, so I will just go with a gray, all of that. A little bit of goldenrod for the grasses. All right, I've got considerably more shadow than I expected, so I'm going to add that in now. It's all going to be in shadow in there. So just a really thick drop shadow there. Shadow communicates depth, so that will work. Come back here. I think I will add a drop shadow under the letters. As the rendering starts to come together, these things start to become, they start to reveal themselves to you. Well, what if I put this here, put a drop shadow here? Just kind of reinforces how the different materials come together. Okay. All right. Cherry, berry, pale cherry, blueberry, all there on them there are people. Blueberry in the shadow. Under coats and under purses and under hair. There's a bit of blueberry on that shaded side. Blueberry. Blueberry kind of in the base of each of our plants there. A little bit of pale cherry or peach on the sunny side. Follow that same logic that we carried before. Warms up one side of the person. Starts to give that rounded effect that we're after. And then end with colored pencil. We'll do clothing and plants and any embellishing of material colors that we need. I'll just kind of fill in some of my gaps here with some terracotta. Really warm this up. Get a nice fieldstone feel to this. In and with the marker color. Just really nice warm colors in there. Some gray here, just kind of embellish, fill in gaps. Embellish that painted steel look. And then ending with clothing. Just a soft wash or pencil over that marker. Khakis, blue jeans, hoodies. Luggage. And most importantly, knowing when to stop. Knowing when to stop. So a little bit of peach here, light peach on these grasses. That's good. Okay. Pencil just fills in those gaps so nicely. Start to get that shimmer, shine of the steel. Jump to the stone against that cold steel. Good sort of material juxtapositions from the palette. A bit of green in our broadleaf. A bit of pink. Remember my palette now. Clothing, blue jeans, khakis. Leggings, coats, jackets.